How can we combat the inevitable circumstances of life and maintain a positive spirit? That's what we're going to dive into today on episode number 142 of the All Around Growth Podcast. Good morning, and thank you for tuning in to the show. This episode today is going to come straight out of the Rudder of the Day, written by Dan Miller, author of 48 Days to the Work and Life You Love. A 61-year-old gentleman who lost his job 7 months earlier came to see me for life coaching. When a long period of time has passed without a job, I always suspect more issues to be lurking in the sidelines. Yes, his wife left him 4 months ago. His daughter, the joy of his life, got married and moved away 5 months ago. His investments were now worth less than half of what they were 3 years ago. He had worked for the same company for 36 years, and now they let him go with a small severance package. He's unconnected at his church and feels rejected on all sides. He made the last mortgage payment 3 weeks ago on a dream house that now must be sold to settle the divorce, and he'll likely move into an apartment in town. Where do we go from here? Proverbs chapter 18, verse 14 tells us, "A man's spirit sustains him in sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear?" Or in the Living Bible, quote, "What hope is left?" Close quote. Quote, "Times of general calamity and confusion create great minds. The purest ore is produced from the hottest furnace, and the brightest thunderbolt is elicited from the darkest storms." Close quote. Charles Caleb Colton. Each area of our lives requires that we are making deposits of success. Tiny withdrawals with no deposits will lead to bankruptcy in relationships, physically, spiritually, and socially, as well as in jobs and finances. I know that in crisis, the area of most pain gets most of our attention. But often it is by making extra deposits in other areas that a person can springboard back to success in even the most critical ones. My advice: set aside time for vigorous physical exercise. Walk 3 miles. The feeling will help cleanse and stimulate creativity. Seek out a godly mentor. Much of the success of AA has been in having another person to call on in the lowest times. Read the Bible and other inspirational material at least 2 hours daily. Volunteer for a worthy cause. Helping someone else in need is a great way to ease the inward pain. Get a job, even if it's not your dream job or a great career move. Deliver pizzas or work in the garden department at Home Depot. To get moving in a positive direction while you continue to build for long-term success. Quote, "People are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out, but when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within." Elisabeth Kübler-Ross. Unfortunately, some losses are irretrievable, and some pain is debilitating. If you recognize too many withdrawals in your life, take drastic measures to stop the hemorrhaging today. Quote, "A joyful heart makes a face cheerful, but a sad heart produces a broken spirit." Close quote. That's from Proverbs chapter 15, verse 13. And finally, what are you doing to keep your spirit strong today? Well, for me, what I'm doing to keep my spirit strong today is recording another episode of the podcast and sharing it with you. This show, as I failed to mention in the introduction, is intended to give us and equip us with tools and insight in order to build the life and homestead of our dreams. And oftentimes when we are going about living life on life's terms, we encounter what Dan called the circumstances of life. And it is not always easy to maintain a positive spirit under some of those circumstances of life. I like reading this in the morning, and I think some of those suggestions that he outlined here are helpful if we find ourselves stuck in a rut. Those suggestions, again, are setting aside time for vigorous physical exercise. And he writes, simply walking 3 miles. Maybe you're not in the best shape. Maybe you can't walk 3 miles. I remember 10 years ago or so, I felt inspired to get in better shape. But at that time, I was in terrible shape. And on top of that, I was a heavy smoker and a heavy drinker, and I was just overweight. I couldn't walk more than a half a mile, or I couldn't jog more than a half a mile, including taking walking breaks. But over time, over a period of a couple of years, I transitioned and set goals and eventually was able to successfully run a marathon without stopping. Now, my goals for the marathon were to simply complete it and not walk. But on the other hand, that is exactly what I was able to do. I'm a little distracted right now because there's a sheriff in an unusual place right there at the tracks, and I don't know why. And every time I see a cop, I get a little tuned in and constantly look in the rear view. Old habits die hard. I was also involved in a car accident recently. But luckily, no damage was done to my vehicle, no impact was made, although I guess I was at fault. Though, that's another story for another time. And that's one thing that I haven't been doing lately, is setting aside time for vigorous physical exercise. I had been all throughout the winter and early spring, and at some point this spring, when the season picked up, I fell out of my routine. Now, a lot of things have changed, and I had a long conversation last night about things that I'm involved in, things that I'm not involved in, and I made the analogy of my life being like a pie plate. And many of the things that I had been involved in the past, I sought involvement in those various things to fill a void in my life, to fill an empty space in that pie plate. And as I begin to seek and fill those voids, I accumulated more pie. Within what seemed like no time at all, I had a full pie plate and more pie than I knew what to do with. However, all the pieces of pie that were in the pie plate weren't really the types of pie that I was looking for. So in order to continue making the change that I wish to be making, I need to continue to remove that which no longer serves me or I no longer have the time to engage in, and engage in behavior and activity that does. And that mindset of removing the things that are no longer of benefit to me, the things that no longer serve me, are the deposits of success that I think Dan is talking about. Because if we continue to give and give and give and give, those could be considered the tiny withdrawals with no deposits that lead to bankruptcy in relationships, physically, spiritually, and socially, as well as our jobs and finances. This is the proverbial burnout that many of us have experienced, and if we don't change our ways, we will experience again. And perhaps in life, the burnout that you experienced was at your career. But have you ever considered the potential for emotional burnout, physical burnout, spiritual burnout, social burnout? I was lucky enough to get invited to dinner last Friday by an old friend. And with some of the volunteer work and involvement in the church that I've been engaging in over the past 18 to 24 months, I've developed a friendship, several actually. And those keep my heart full. And because I have the strength of quality relationships in my life, I don't need or desire the social media component in the same way that I did before. And as I navigate through this particular time in life, I want to focus on the strongest relationships that I have, and most of those are not through social media. So, luckily I still have a job, but I'm preparing for what in my life would be one of the biggest disasters I could potentially experience, which would be the loss of my job. But as I continue making progress towards my goals, the loss of a job seems less terrifying and almost like it might be more of a blessing. So, in conclusion, I'd like to quote this one more time. This quote from Elisabeth Kübler-Ross. People are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out, but when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within. So, do what you can to keep the light within you shining brightly. And sometimes that means making those deposits of success, making additional sacrifices in life when we recognize that we are making too many withdrawals, and taking action to stop the hemorrhaging in life so that we can gain control and keep moving forward in order to build the lives and homesteads of our dreams. If you like what you hear, join us over at t.me/allaroundgrowth, and you can join in the conversation there, provide some feedback on the show, provide some insight into your own life and what you're doing regarding those deposits of success and how you're navigating through this life. We've got a small growing community there. And also, if you like what you hear, you could go to the show notes. If you're a listener through Apple Podcasts or iTunes, there's a link there in all capital letters where you can click to rate and review the podcast. That definitely helps with the algorithms and the tracking and so on and so forth. And if you would be so kind to leave a written review, if you feel so inclined, that would be great as well. That's about it, everybody. I sure do appreciate your time. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to catching you on the next episode. Have a great day. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.